and welcome to The Nation. You're with me, PASHA Rahim. In a rapidly evolving world, the call for inclusion and accessibility has never been more urgent. And SIVANATHAN, the president of the Association of the Inclusive Outdoor Classroom, is at the forefront of this movement, and her work emphasizes the importance of creating environments that empower persons with disabilities. And she champions the role of youth-led innovations in addressing the challenges of accessibility. Today, we explore the impact of these efforts and discuss how public-private partnerships and community-driven initiatives can transform the lives of persons with disabilities. Welcome to The Nation, and thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Pasha.
Right, so let's start with the focus on inclusion for persons with disabilities. First of all, let's talk about what inspired you to establish the Association of the Inclusive Outdoor Classroom, and how does it specifically cater to individuals who have different needs or different abilities?
I like this question. What really inspired me to start this is because when I was teaching in the universities and I was, dealing with adult learners, and whenever I speak about inclusion for persons with disabilities, there's always a question mark because that's not really in the manuals. So it was, it was getting to a point where it was very difficult to really explain to them what inclusion means and how can it work. So that's why the idea of the inclusive outdoor classroom came up 9 years ago. And when we had these adult learners coming there for their experiential practicums, and it was really a big eye-opener for them to actually, see it. Reading it is just one thing altogether, but when you actually see there and you are there with the children, with and without disabilities, the whole ball game changes. Yeah.
Right. So we talked about, we mentioned, the role of public-private partnerships, right? Perhaps you could elaborate for us what role these partnerships play in actually fostering accessible environments for persons with disabilities.
If you have someone in your program who is a wheelchair user, and if we go to the park, and in most parks, the equipments are not accessible for this person. And so if you want to make changes, you can have ideas, you can brainstorm among families, but if you are not with the right stakeholders, it poses a challenge. So working with the local municipal council is so important. Working with your city councillor is so important. Inviting them to come and see your program so that they get the idea, they speak to the families, and they are the game changers. We are just the bridge, actually, letting them know what's the concerns and how and why accessibility is so important, because it's not about fundraising and just getting that playground equipment. It's about talking to your town planner and to see whether this is okay to be put in that park. Right. There's so many different stations we need to actually go through, so that's why working with public-private partnership is so important. Okay,
you spoke about concerns. What are some of the concerns when, particularly with for persons with disabilities, and what exactly are some of the adjustments or allowances that needs to be made in order for us to be inclusive?
We got to start putting ourselves in that situation. That is step number one, I feel. So until and unless you can imagine how life is going to be, if you need certain accommodations to be met and it's not there, that's number one. And number two is all children love to play. And if you go to the park and you see the equipments or people are not so friendly there, what do? Families can only do so much. So it's us, the members of the public. How can we move this agenda? How can we look at it not as a charity model, but as a bigger picture, as a human rights model? And so the best place is to be seen outside there.
And what are some of these, what are some of the challenges? Now, you've worked on this, association has been established for the past 9 years. So that's a good amount of time for you to have seen personally some of the challenges that the participants of your program personally have gone through. What are some of those examples that you could share with us and our viewers?
Sometimes when they don't look like how you expect a certain person to look like. So when they are in the park or when they are in restaurants, people stare at them. And when you stare at somebody and not asking them, hey, you know, tell me your name, that's a big challenge. And when you go to restaurants, and if you're a wheelchair user and you don't have that ramp there, what do you do? Or if the ramp is there, but if your toilets are not accessible, what do you do again?
Right, but that's in the case of you know, indoor spaces. You know, how do outdoor learning spaces differ from indoor spaces? Now, we're used to, you know, having ramps for wheelchairs. We've got disabled toilets, etc., where they take into account the space or amount of space that's needed to wheel in a wheelchair, for example. But if you're talking about outdoor learning spaces, how is this different?
If you are blind and if you're going to the park, it's quite difficult for, you know, someone to actually navigate himself or, you know, herself there, because the pavements are just not friendly. And if you're on a wheelchair and if there are no ramps in the park, how do you even get to the park? Because there's a lot of drains there. So how do we, you know, go past that? And if you're deaf and you go to the park and someone speaks to you, but you cannot converse with that person, how do we do that? So what can we do? Maybe have sign language posters around the park so that people can actually use that to start communicating with someone who's deaf. Yeah.
Right, okay, we're going to move on to talking about youth-led innovations, which is one of the things that you do in your association. But we're going to go for a very, very short break, and we'll be right back with Anne after this. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back on The Nation, and we're talking to Anne from the Association of the Inclusive Outdoor Classroom. Now, this sounds very, very interesting, actually. We talked about youth-led innovation. It's something that you practice in your association. Let's, perhaps you could share some of the examples where innovative projects which have been led by students and also young professionals that have made significant impact on accessibility and also inclusion.
Yeah, one of the projects that was really, you know, run by youths is that they did a fundraising for us, and through this fundraising, they actually got us adaptable materials so that children can actually use them and play with them. Like, for example, football. You know, for different children, different sizes, different texture. So we actually did a training for them, and we actually told them that, hey, you know what, we are in need of this, and so what can you do? So they were actually volunteers in our program, and then after that they said, hey, you know what, this is what we want to do for you, because we saw some of the children, they just couldn't play. So what can we do? So youth are very important because they're so creative, and their mindsets are not fixed. And they are always willing to actually challenge themselves or challenge the environment so that, you know, no one will be excluded.
Yeah, but also I think, you know, youth just bring a completely different perspective to, you know, solving problems and coming up with solutions, right? So how do you think their perspectives differ when tackling accessibility issues, you know, in a way where perhaps we would have looked at it in a different manner, but when that problem is presented to a youth, for example, come up with just like, oh, we've never thought about that before.
They have got a good network of friends. And the way they actually brainstorm ideas among their friends whom they think can actually work to actually solve projects is just amazing. You know, so that's how it is. It's like multi-level marketing, you know, they just invite friends to come and say, hey, you know, we have this particular challenge now. How can we solve it? And I've seen it, and it's just amazing. You're right. Something I would not think about, but when they actually present it, and it's like, oh wow, okay, I wish I had thought about that earlier. So as a matter of fact, we are learning from these young people.
Right.
Yeah.
How can we further involve youth, you know, in this area?
Empowering them. And it doesn't mean if you don't come from the School of Education, you cannot be a valuable asset in this program. If you come, say, from the School of Engineering, you could always think of devices that will actually accommodate, you know, someone who would be needing that.
Okay, let's talk about collaboration, because I think that's one of the most important elements whenever we're talking about a community-driven project, right? So how does the Association of the Inclusive Outdoor Classroom, how do you support these collaborations with young or youth innovators?
Well, the first step is to convince them that their time will be well spent in this program. And so that's a training altogether. And secondly is to actually challenge them in their respective field of education, as in how can you bring value to this particular program or to this particular person. And so, you know, we talk about multi-generational projects, we talk about human rights, because everyone's into human rights, everyone's into we don't want to be discriminated, we don't want to be stigmatized. So it's really around that. And also you just have to do your homework and your research and to see who is doing what, and then call them, send them a message and say, hey, would you like to partner with us, because we feel that we can help you, and you can also help us to work towards something greater for persons with disabilities.
Right. So you mentioned having to convince these youths, right? So how difficult or how successful actually have you been in convincing youth to participate in the program?
It has its pros and cons, because
Sure.
because a lot of times, a lot of people, and I'm not generalizing it, this is my own experience, a lot of them feel that if that doesn't involve me, or if that doesn't concern me, why should I be there? So we really need someone who's been in that program to go out there and to tell people about it, as in, it doesn't matter who you are, because you'll always be valuable to a program. Yeah.
Right. So how do you believe, coming from a educational institution, how do you believe education plays in cultivating a generation of leaders who are, they're just passionate about inclusion, because it's not something that's just newly been talked about. We've talked about inclusion, but sometimes it still feels as if it's lip service rather than something that's being actively pursued. Like we're not truly being inclusive when we really think about it.
Right. I personally feel it starts in schools. So if you have children who are all different in schools, and children actually see them, it becomes a lifestyle for them. And so by them being in that same space at the same time, and not just during certain subjects, it really helps them to build empathy, leadership skills, because you are there with someone who's not like you. So you have to actually start thinking, how can I make this place better for that person? So it really starts in schools.
Right. How important do you feel, this, when we talk about inclusion, it's not just making accommodations or making allowances, but really making persons with disabilities or children with learning disabilities to really feel accepted within that classroom setting, be it in a formal, educational institution, be it in a school, college, or even when they're playing outside in the playground, like what you're doing in the inclusive outdoor classroom. Right. So how can we really, instead of just it being a token, how can we really make them feel like, okay, we want you to be a part? It's really nothing different or less about you, that we are all just as capable, if not more.
Adults working with them, they need to know that everyone has rights. Even a person with disability has rights. Malaysia is a treaty to the Conventions of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and every adult working with children should know what children's rights are all about. So once you know that you're accountable for this child that has been entrusted to your care, and then I believe mindsets will change.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. It's been an insightful chat with you so far, but we're going to go for another very quick break, and we'll be right back with Anne. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us on The Nation. We're talking to Anne and the Association of the Inclusive Outdoor Classroom. Now, we've talked about youth-led innovations and how it's so important to involve the youth, especially in decision-making and also, in just really problem-solving in everyday life situations. We talked about how it's important for us to really include persons with disabilities as well. Let's move on to, some success stories and really what is the impact this has on the community and also what some of your future visions are. Perhaps you could share with us a success story that really stands out to you and, where you feel that your work with the association has made a substantial difference in the lives of people.
One of our major success stories is that we actually work very closely with our city councillor. Her name is Jen. And so, she is a regular visitor at our program, as well as the community leaders. And so when she saw the families and when she spoke to the children, and there was one day she asked a young boy, she says, what is it that you like? And all he told her was, I wish I can play on the playground equipment with my friends. Mm-hmm. And he was on a wheelchair and there was no equipment there for him to play. And that really got her thinking. And so, she says, what can we do? So, we did a brainstorming session with our youth and we asked them. And so a lot of them came up with great ideas. And I said, hey, we need to, really think about this, how we want to be doing it. So that's where we looked at policies of the country. We looked at what children need and assumingly if, nothing is being done, mm-hmm. there could be other health issues as well, mental health issues as in, hey, everyone's playing, but I can't play. So we actually wrote a letter, we wrote a proposal to her, and I believe she had submitted it to the council. And now, in that park, in USJ 11 Subang Jaya, there stands a playground equipment where if you're on a wheelchair, you can access it. If you are someone who needs to use a walking stick, you can also access it. Mm-hmm. So it's like a multi-general equipment. So right. That is one of our success stories, that everybody can play. It's just a matter of public-private partnership once again.
Right, that's fantastic. But when we're talking about, facilities where it is accessible to all, I think one of the major points that people would always bring up is it expensive? Is it costly to put in specially, equipment or special playground items that's fitted differently in order for us to include and accommodate persons with disabilities? Because that would normally be one of the top questions if you were to, go to a council and they say, okay, how much is this going to cost us?
Yes, it is one of our challenges as well. Mm-hmm. But it's always about educating them and saying, hey, we need to talk about universal design. And what is universal design? It's a design for everybody. And if you invest in that long term, you don't have to reinvest because we are an aging community already.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about, how do you measure the impact of the initiatives that you've run, and also what has been the general feedback from your communities?
General feedback has been, we didn't know someone with a disability can be leading sports session. We didn't know someone with a disability can sit down and have a meal with us. And when you have families coming from afar, for us that is a success stories. And sometimes we have to say we are sorry now because we are full. And then when you get an international recognition saying that we've championed for children's rights, what more can I say? Our team, we've done a good job right. to actually tell people out there that, hey, we are championing for children's rights.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the future projects or goals that you have for the Association of the Inclusive Outdoor Classroom? Now, you've managed to successfully have an inclusive playground or park in USJ 11. Are you planning to expand to other parks around in the Subang Jaya area, for example?
Subang Jaya Municipal Council has got many playgrounds like that already. Okay. Yeah, so that's a good start.
Are we looking into expanding into other municipal councils?
Petaling Jaya has also come up with that.
Okay.
So, and then what's our next plan is that we have a training manual. So now we want to use this young people train them so that they can champion inclusive outdoor classrooms wherever they are. So that it's just not in Subang Jaya but nationwide maybe, and also our young people. So empower them, because they all can do something. We may not be the same, but you can still do something differently, better. We don't know.
And I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Like you've shown us that it can be done, for as long as there is involvement between the community and the municipal councils and, whoever is the stakeholders involved. Very quickly, just perhaps a message that you would like to convey to our audience, young people out there, organizations who are perhaps just starting on their journey, in promoting true inclusion for persons with disabilities, and perhaps maybe someone who might be interested in building an inclusive park in their area, in their communities?
One of the most important things is that you need to ensure that you're not doing it for yourself. It's not for fame, but you're doing it because you want the community at large to be part of this circle. And also, don't undermine yourself saying that, hey, I'm a nobody, I don't think I can do it. Everyone can do something. So if you're not sure what you can do, go be a volunteer in organizations and you may find your calling there. Yeah.
Fantastic. It's been such a wonderful time talking to you about your association, the Association of the Inclusive Outdoor Classroom. It is a mouthful, to be honest, but the Association of the Inclusive Outdoor Classroom, I'm sure you've done wonderful things, and we're looking forward to more coming from you. That's all the time that we have on The Nation today with SIVANATHAN, the president of the Association of the Inclusive Outdoor Classroom. If you know anyone who has disabilities and you want to do something, you can be an agent of change yourself. Thanks for watching The Nation with me, PASHA Rahim, today. We'll see you some other time. Take care.